Everybody, welcome back to the Calibrate Tools and DIY channel once again. Man, hope everybody's doing all right. Crazy world out here. Yeah. Anyway, let's dive right into it, guys. The new meaning of cordless. What do I mean by that? Well, I came across this article having to do with power, electricity and the distribution of power and everything. And I made a few connections as I was perusing the article. And it seems to be a trend that throughout recent history, there is everything is trending towards decentralization, whether that's decentralization of currency. We see with the crypto and Bitcoin and all that stuff. The internet, even before Bitcoin, right? You couldn't have Bitcoin without the internet. But let's talk about the internet. The internet represented the decentralization of interinformation, right? Access to information became widespread. Anybody and their mama that had a internet connection could get access to what was once gatekept. And that seems to be where everything's going, right? And when you think about it, before that, everything, you had to have access to everything, whether that was through in the social hierarchy of the world, it was through status, right? Whether it's racial status, whether it's economic status, socioeconomic, right? Status. And then once you got into the corporate world, then you may had to have a clearance to get into certain environments, right? And all of that. But as time went on, we see the decentralization of that whole structure of things being gatekept, of things being, of lack of access starts to crumble. And, to me, it's a beautiful thing, but it's not a beautiful thing to a lot of other people that have their power bases entrenched in that lack of access. That lack of access is actually what gives them the power that they have today. But like I said, when all of that crumbles, or starts to crumble, that could threaten a lot of people's livelihood or ways of life, right? And that's just a general overview of, the type of thoughts I was having when I was looking at this article, which really has nothing to do with like socioeconomic access. At least on its face, it doesn't. It has to do with power, electricity, right? And I found it very interesting. So I figured I wanted to share that with you guys, how the decentralization of things seems to be the way the world is going. And like I said, I like it, right? Because it gives access. Once again, there's that word access to those who didn't have access before, right? And, there's going to be a battle though, right? If you think about it, think about solar energy. That solar energy, or the harnessing of solar energy, threatens the traditional energy sources like, fossil fuels and stuff like that. And it takes a while for these new forms of renewable energies or renewable sources of energy to get off the ground, because they gotta fight the bureaucracy, right? They gotta fight the entrenched ideologies that are out there, right? The oil and gas industry. They're not trying to have solar panels dominate the grid, right? They don't want that. They don't want people who are able to sell energy back to the grid, even though they're doing it now, because you can't stop these trends. They're going to happen anyway. So, but when it comes to actual electricity and how that's being harnessed, other than solar power and other forms of renewable energy, I stumbled upon these other forms of harnessing electricity that I think is going to revolutionize the future. It's happening already. It's just going to take time. All right. It's not going to take over in our lifetime, but it's definitely going to take time. So let's kind of look at that. Okay. So 5 power and electric trends that will shape the future. It says, as technology continues its ever-changing wave of innovations and updates, engineers strive to stay ahead of electrical engineering trends. Why? Because the future of electronics influences several industries, such as automotive, healthcare, manufacturing, telecommunications, banking and finance, retail, education, energy, aerospace, and security. Basically, every major industry is going to be affected by what's happening in the field of electrical engineering and all the innovations that's happening there. Okay, so it says, regardless of the industry, engineers will be responsible for pioneering and building new ways of interacting with technology. So this first form, right? Like I said, there's 5 that they're listing here. This is what struck me the most, and I think it's going to be the most revolutionary of all the forms of, harnessing electricity and stuff. Okay, it's called wireless power transfer, right? Okay, so it says, for example, did you ever worry about forgetting to pack your charger when getting ready to leave on a trip? Or maybe you did forget it. Well, this trend in electrical engineering eliminates any need for concern or inconvenience. It's still in its early stages of development and production, but wireless power transfer, WPT, is a promising innovation for the future of electronics. In short, WPT, wireless power transfer, okay, also known as wireless energy transfer, is the transmission of electrical energy from a power source, the transmission of electrical energy from a power source to a receiver without the use of interconnecting wires. WPT systems use time-varying electromagnetic fields for energy transmission. These systems ride along the same fields and waves as wireless communication devices. Essentially, a receiver in a device picks up the power, which allows for contactless charging, powering, and data communications. Now, we've probably seen some examples of this with the phones that you can stick onto a charger without, you don't use wires to charge a phone anyway, but it's a form, I think, of wireless transfer. It's in, they always experiment with these prototypes out on the market already. But the ultimate goal is to see if you can expand and scale these forms of technology into bigger and wider applications. So they'll start out with the phone, right, that you can stick onto a charger without, and all of that. You don't have to plug the phone into the socket, and it'll charge it, wirelessly. But like I said, they're expanding into different applications, and I can think of, say you're driving an electrical vehicle or an EV, and you get stuck out in the middle of nowhere because you run out of charge. Well, I would predict that at some point you wouldn't even have to worry about it. They will have some kind of infrastructure, right? Wireless infrastructure in the atmosphere like they have now, and through whatever kind of waves, electromagnetic waves in the atmosphere. All you have to do is type a code on your phone, and it'll download that charge into your car. And it doesn't matter if you're 100 miles out in the middle of nowhere, right? So a lot of problems are going to be alleviated by this, right? And that's just a form of the decentralization of power, of energy, electricity, right? Because if you think about it, electricity is all around us. It doesn't just exist in a socket or in a light bulb. That's not where it lives. It lives all around us. It's just a matter of harnessing that. And so wireless power transfer is just a step closer to harnessing the already ubiquitous field of electromagnetic energy in the atmosphere, right? All around us. And, that's a form of decentralization. Okay. So imagine that. Here are some innovative uses of this type of energy transfer. Okay. It says, if you think wireless power transfer is limited to your phone or your computer, think again. electric vehicle charging docks, security software, and heart pumps have all been discussed as potential use cases for wireless power transfer. In short, wireless power transfer has transformed or will transform several aspects of our lives. Smart homes. Okay, it says WPT, wireless power transfer, can be used to power a range of smart home devices such as lighting, climate control, security systems, and more. Automotive. WPT can enable contactless charging of electric vehicles, just like I was talking about before. Sometimes, believe it or not, I get a download and then I read a few sentences and they actually say what I was thinking. Okay, so sometimes I'm a step ahead. So that'll provide a more efficient and convenient way of powering them up. Industrial, okay, applications. It can be used to power industrial machinery and equipment, reducing the need for wires and cables and increasing safety. Yeah, I guess you won't have to trip over stuff like wires and cables and stuff on the ground. But imagine that, being able to harness the, this electrical energy that's already around us without having to use a plug or plug something in, right? Wearables. It can be used to power and charge wearables such as fitness trackers, smart watches, and medical devices. Remote areas. WPT can be used to provide energy in remote areas where it's difficult to connect the grid. Yeah, that's along the lines, I think, of solar energy. One thing about solar energy that captivated me was its potential to provide power to those who are not connected to a grid. You may live in a country where there is no grid, right? Or it's very sparse, or it's concentrated in more affluent areas. It's not as available to everybody. So you throw a few solar panels on the roof or wherever, and you got energy. So that kind of reminds me of that. But they're not talking about a solar panel here, right? They're talking about different kinds of devices that would provide this wireless technology here. All right, so let's see. Kind of skipping through here. Wearable tech. Yeah, might as well. Let's jump into it here. Let's see what they say about wearable technology. It says they're constantly innovating in this sector, wearable technology. All right. They said it's far more than just a watch or an electrical engineering trend. It can become a life-saving device. Electrical engineers have been hard at work developing wearable pieces that prevent injury and workplace accidents. For example, they have these things called soul power boots, and they're specifically designed to eliminate on-the-job injuries. Okay, these boots contain technology that monitor the wearer's real-time location, environmental conditions, and even fatigue. Wow, they can tell how tired you are. That's interesting. Well, it's not too surprising, right? They have watches and that can tell how fast your heart's beating and all of that. So all in all, these boots are meant to improve situational awareness and improve safety in the workplace. Yeah, okay. Beyond the boots, smart clothing is another form of wearable technology that incorporates sensors and other electronics into fabric, tracking physiological signals like heart rate, body temperature, and respiration, and providing feedback to the user. I can see that could be one way that a general contractor can monitor the conditions of his subcontractors or workers, and say if it's too hot outside and he's monitoring this stuff on the screen, he can tell that one person, hey, your heart rate's too high, the temperature, your body temperature is too high, so he can tell that person to go sit down or take a break or go home or something before they faint or have a heart attack. And I guess something like this on a job site would reduce the insurance premiums for these contractors or any any employer. All right, so you can see all these see what kind of applications they can use it for. It says some brands such as Sensoria track user performance and activity metrics such as heart rate, steps taken, calories burned, and distance traveled. Others, like a company called Spire Health, are designed to send ongoing real-time health statistics to medical professionals to monitor health conditions. Smart clothing can also be used to connect to other devices such as smartphones, tablets, and laptops. Now, one of the things, now they didn't mention this feature, and that's tracking, right? This is one way for these employers to become big brother and track you, right? So say you go to the bathroom and you go in the stalls because you want to take a nap or get away from work, they can actually track you unless you take it off. So, it can go all kinds of ways, right? And if, let's just say they can tell when you take it off, right? Imagine that. Now, is that violating privacy? So, with every form of technology, new form of technology that comes online, there's always a legal aspect to it that has to be hashed out before they're fully online, because, lawsuits aren't, the most desired thing either. So if they foresee a lawsuit, then they have to protect themselves with this new technology. All right. It happened again. It says, and there are other potential applications of smart clothing as well, such as tracking location. Guys, I didn't read that. I downloaded and then I see it in the next sentence. Okay. Say what you want about it. Tracking, it can track you. It can help wearers find help when they are lost or in danger. Now I like that part of it, right? You know how many people go lost or missing or found dead because they went hiking or got lost in the desert, or they got abducted by somebody, especially with human trafficking going on today. You would probably want your kid or your wife or whoever, wife, girlfriend, to have some kind of wearable technology, some kind of technology where they can be tracked in case something happens. So yeah, I think that's that's the upside to it. Everything comes with an upside or downside, right? You can't just have everything with an upside. All right, so let's see here. Detect injuries and falls. An alert you in emergency, in the cases of emergency, right? Alert people. All right, interesting. That's the whole wearable clothing thing. All right, so here's another aspect of the decentralization of power when it comes to, the electrical power, the grid, that I found interesting as well. It says, almost gone are the days of customer reliance on power from a single localized power company. You know how threatening that sentence must be to the owners of these utility companies, right? To know that one day they're not going to be there anymore. They are going the way of the horse and buggy. And that's the power of decentralization. It says today's power generation industry trends dictate a better, more efficient way to generate power with smart grids and microgrids. What is a smart grid? It's a power grid that uses digital technology to monitor and manage the flow of electricity to improve the efficiency and reliability of the electricity supply. Okay. Smart grids are used. They use a two-way communication system between the utility company and the consumer, better managing the delivery of electricity and responding to changing demand. This trend in electrical engineering allows renewable energy sources and storage technologies to provide a more sustainable energy supply. All right, so they're coming out with smart grids. All right, it's pretty much like a smart watch for the grid, right? They're decentralizing the grid. They're making it smarter for the benefit of the utility company, and I would say more so you and me, the consumer, right? Microgrids. A microgrid consists of interconnecting loads and distributed energy sources that comprise a single controllable entity with respect to the grid. Or to put it more simply, microgrids are self-contained power sources that provide power for smaller community-based areas. Okay, the grid can operate in two modes, island or connected, depending on need and the community power usage. All right, there are 5 types, okay, which are used based on a community's location. All right, so there's campus environment, community, remote off-grid, military base, and commercial. Microgrids have several advantages. They can provide a source of power in the event of an outage. They can also help reduce the frequency and duration of outages. All right, so that last sentence leads me to believe that these microgrids, they take some of the load off of the main grid, right? Because now it's going to be more decentralized, where the microgrids handle certain areas, certain jurisdictions themselves, right? And that's a form of decentralization as well, for the greater good, in my opinion. And so it says the cost, they're small, and which makes them more cost effective than traditional grid infrastructure. So these power plants that you see around town or in certain parts of town, they're probably going to go the way of the horse and buggy as well. Because if you notice, technology trends smaller, right? This cell phone back in the day was probably about this big, this long, and this thick. Now look at it. This is an even smaller one here. So you're going to see these things trend smaller, right? Because I guess, you know, as you learn how to harness technology, it just trends toward the concept of efficiency, not just in a theoretical sense, but in an actual physical sense, where you don't need a large infrastructure to do the same work, you know. And it'll probably be able to do more, or at least the output will probably be more from a smaller device, which is the paradox. But you see it all the time in tech, right? Smaller something is, the more it can the more output that'll give you. Sustainability, renewable energy sources can be incorporated into microgrids, reducing dependence on fossil fuels. So, you know, I guess you can attach whatever to it, or connect a solar power grid to it as well. All right. They provide local power that is tailored to the specific needs of the area. They're easy to expand and adjust to changing energy needs. And that's the concept of smart, right? It can adjust, right? It's not just sending out a load that's not tailored to the needs of the community, right? It can actually, it's almost like, I did a video on the difference between a multimeter, a digital multimeter, and an analog multimeter, right? The thing about an analog multimeter, which most people don't use, they usually use the digital, which came out in the 80s. The analogs have been around longer than that, like the beginning of the 20th century. But it's more of a mechanical device, right? It was pre-digital, but it still serves a purpose, right? It still has certain features based on the nature of it, of how it's made, that make it superior to a digital device, a digital multimeter. So an analog meter has a needle, right? Has a needle. Matter of fact, I think I got it over here. So this is an analog multimeter right here, right? It has a scale, right? The different colors and arcs. By the way, go watch the video on it. Very informative. And there's a needle here. So when you connect the leads to a load to get a reading, a voltage reading or a resistance reading, this needle is going to go back and forth on the, on the scale here. All right. The good thing about an analog meter is that you're able to read fluctuating currents or charges, right? You can't necessarily read that with a digital multimeter. You can get snapshots with a digital multimeter on the LCD screen, right? But you can get a real-time visual of the behavior of your signal, whether it's coming from a battery, whether it's coming from, say, for example, you're trying to measure some RF signals, radio frequency signals, things like that, right? If that signal is fluctuating, and sometimes you need to know if it is, right, to get an accurate reading or see how it's behaving. You can't do that with a digital multimeter like you can with this, because this needle is going to be jumping back and forth. You can tell if it's a choppy signal or not, right? If the voltage coming out of that battery or whatever you're trying to get the voltage readings from is choppy, you can tell with this analog multimeter here, because that needle will tell you more than a digital can, right? So in this sense, even though it's an older device, it's almost like a smart device, right? Because you can have a more accurate reading of what's going on with the signal that's not as stable. Okay, so in that case, it's a smart device. I don't know if you guys get my analogy or not, but that's kind of what the definition of smart is. It can actually, it can read the different changes and adjust accordingly. Okay, so that'll save you money in the long run. All right. It says, let's see here. Sustainability, efficiency, scalability. Talked about that. The power is in the hands of the consumer now, the customer. Not only do microgrids and smart grids improve communication between power supply companies and technology, but they also put the power in the hands of the customer. Literally, with smart grids, customers can generate their own power and sell it back, or, sell it to whoever if they have a surplus amount of power there, right? It says microgrids allow communities to generate their power on site when they need it. This power generation trend has the potential to change the infrastructure of electricity delivery as we know it. And I would also say that it has the power to, even if it's slightly, change the socioeconomic status of that particular community. Because if you can harness electricity and sell it, guess what? The value of your community instantly goes up, because now you have a new form of generating income. Okay. And whether you use that income or save it or not, you have a reliable source, or you have another source of income, which is energy that you didn't have before. So it's almost like money. It's almost okay. So I think these trends are great, that are popping up, these innovations in the world. And of course, there's always going to be, I hate to be negative, but those who are going to try to stifle that because they see it as a threat to the status quo, to their way of life. And we can go all kinds of ways with that, but you guys know what I'm talking about. All right, what about electrical vehicles? I mentioned that earlier in the live. It says, despite years of mass production, electric vehicles still remain a trend in electrical engineering that continues to rise in consumer popularity. Electric cars are becoming mainstream, right? Though charging infrastructure still needs to be developed, many electric vehicle owners can find readily accessible charging stations in many locations. By the way, just to let you know, if you're a techie person or you like to invest in tech, charging stations are a big opportunity for you to get into, right? They have these fast charging stations that are popping up around. I don't know if maybe not in your city, but I'm sure in the larger metropolitan areas. And you could start your own charging station company, because that's where everything's going anyway, right? especially with what I mentioned before, which is a wireless, what is it, WPT? What does that stand for again? Wireless power transfer. All right. So charging is going to get faster and faster and faster with these, with the, with this wireless power transfer technology getting better and better over time. So if you are a forward thinking person, you're going to look at this tech and say, I need to get in on that earlier or right now. Okay. So if you have, if you have the funds, or if you're able to procure a loan or get some kind of venture capital funding, if you're thinking on that scale, that's the tech to look into today. Okay. That's one of the things that most people don't think about it, but it's right in front of your eyes. Okay. You can start a business with that. And that's almost like a passive, once you set it up, it's almost like passive income, right? You don't need to really hire anybody. Maybe a tech person to monitor the technology, see if it's operating right. But man, with AI today, you probably don't even need a person. You can have AI monitor stuff, and something's up, it'll alert you and say, oh, this machine is acting like this, whatever. And then, you go out there and fix it, or, you're going to need somebody probably to repair it or fix it or maintain it. Yeah. So I don't think you should be afraid of this technology coming out, afraid for your job or anything like that. You should just adapt and say, okay, how can I benefit? Where can I get in? Not getting in is riskier than ignoring it. I'll tell you that. Okay. And I know everybody doesn't have the money to get all this stuff. To get in on all of this, but at least right? At least you know what's happening out there. All right. It says, though charging infrastructure still needs to be developed, many electrical vehicle owners can find readily accessible charging stations in many locations. Consumers might even qualify for tax incentives or credits for purchasing an electrical vehicle. All right, so they're telling you, hey, they're just trying to push that, so you can go out and buy one. Global national governments worldwide are also accelerating the future of electric vehicles by setting specific benchmarks. For instance, in the US, it says, I don't know how old this article is. It says the Biden administration wants half of all vehicles sold in 2030 to be electric. Now, as mentioned, the Biden administration, he's no longer in office. So I don't know what Trump thinks about all of this. He's an oil guy. Furthermore, the Inflation Reduction Act encourages companies to install EV chargers at their properties. Those who do so can receive a 30% tax credit. I don't know if all those tax credits are available now. Once again, I don't know how old this article is, but you can do the research on your own. And they talk about the different types of vehicle options that you can get. All electric vehicles, these models operate entirely on battery power with no engine parts, able to use gasoline. Then you have the plug-in hybrid ones. All right, they offer gasoline and battery powered fueling options and can operate in an all electric mode. Then you have hybrid electric vehicles. Okay, they run entirely off gasoline, but they use an electric motor to lower fuel transmissions. So if you didn't know the difference between the different types of electric vehicles, there you go. All right, so then it talks about the Internet of Things. All right. The Internet of Things is a network of connected devices that can communicate with each other and with other devices. Right. So this phone can communicate with this phone, and it can communicate with that laptop. So everything's connected there. It says they can be anything from phones and computers to sensors, actuators, and other electronic components. So we don't want to limit our concept of the internet to just computers and phones. No, the internet is today is integrated into, like they just said, electronic components, actuators, sensors, And it says through the Internet of Things, data can be collected and analyzed and used to control and automate processes. Um, Man, it makes me think of what Musk is doing, right? What is that thing he just innovated to plug into your brain? I think it's Neuralink or something like that. I haven't really looked into what that's all about, but we're seeing right before our eyes people being turned into robots, right? And it's gonna, tout all the benefits of what it is. And I think it is a expression of their desire to live forever. And it's starting off small, right, with the neural links and with the this and with the that. But eventually, you're going to see cyborgs running around here, right? And it may come quicker than you think, okay? And you can think of all the implications of what I just said, whether it's for military purposes, for domestic law enforcement. I mean, it's going to get crazy. Imagine you have a police force made of cyborgs that, I mean, you see these robots now, right? They have robot dogs, and they have robots that, they have these competitions where the robots are doing all these functions that are it's gets so human like, right? All these more complex functions that say R2D2 couldn't do at all, right? They have humanoid robots that are jumping around, doing flips, backflips. I just seen a video the other day where there was a robot in a restaurant, in a fast food restaurant, flipping burgers, cooking, wiping tables, all kinds. I mean, look, guys, it's right here. It's, but you're not law enforcement. Think about that, right? Think about that. You won't be able to blame a cop for a shooting that was motivated by, whatever it was motivated by, because the robot's going to be doing it. You won't be able to put a face on that person. Matter of fact, they'll dare you to come after that cop, because it won't be a human being. It's going to be a robot, right? Kicking down doors, arresting people, throwing them in the back of a car that's probably an electric vehicle that doesn't have wheels. I mean, it's going to get, imagine the correctional systems, the penitentiaries, what they're going to look like. We hear about all this stuff on the outside. I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but sometimes I do that. But imagine how it's going to look on the inside if you are incarcerated in one of these high-tech, futuristic prisons, right? Where they're AI operated. And if you have a problem with somebody, it's not going to be a bunch of correctional officers coming to break up a fight. It's going to be a bunch of cyborgs. You're not going to be able to fight one of those things. All right. Anyway, like I said, guys, think about it. So many, technology is great, but a lot of times technology reflects the state of man's consciousness. All right. So no matter how great it is, it's going to be some form of technology to reflect that darker nature in man. All right. Let's see here. All right. Room for improvement. It says, while there are standard connections that consumers have come to expect, there's always room for improvement. Consider the upgrade from 4G to 5G. 5G networks, which are faster and more reliable than 4G networks, provided faster download and upload speeds, greater bandwidth, and lower latency. Okay. Says this upgrade allowed more devices to be connected to the internet, at once, and for these devices to communicate more quickly and efficiently. 5G also improved more advanced applications such as augmented and virtual reality. Yeah, augmented and virtual reality. Now, I did a video a while back where I went to a welding trade show, and at one of the booths they had a welding training kit that was basically augmented reality. Okay, teaching you how to weld through augmented reality. So you put these goggles on and you take the torch and you run it across a prop, and when you're looking through the goggles, it's going to depict an actual spark or bead that you're making. It's not real, but it's a graphic that you see through the goggles. So it's augmented, which means that it's layered on top of reality, or what we call the real world, right? Quote unquote. And so this stuff has been out there, right? But I think as time goes on, they're going to use augmented reality to train you in all kinds of ways, right? It's almost like what they have with the Oculus goggles, right? Or the games where you put the goggles on and you're in a different environment and you're playing golf or you're doing something, or you're in a a video game, right? You're in a video game where you're in one of these war games or something like that. That stuff is going to be more integrated into actually training people to actually go to war, and in all kinds of environments, with domestic or foreign, right? So, and it's probably existed before they put it on the market as a video game, right? We think that these video games are just for entertainment. No, this was probably actual war games that people used, and they said, okay, we're going to commercialize it and make some money on it. All right, so yeah, these are just I know I did kind of got away from the whole electrical aspect of this conversation and the distribution of power and the decentralization of power, but it's all connected, whether that's wireless power transfer, wearable tech, power grids like smart grids and microgrids, and electrical vehicles and all of that, and the Internet of Things. So got a taste of a little bit of everything there, and you take it how you want to take it, but world's changing rapidly, and you got to be prepared, right? Got to be prepared. Okay. So anyway, guys, I'll see you on the next one.